Hello everyone. So in this video, I want to share with you a few mastering EQ philosophies that I think will help you for orchestral music, but also all music in general. So the first point is don't do drastic changes. Try to keep your boosts and cuts in mastering under 2 dB. And the reason for that is that when you EQ something in the master, you affect everything, all the instruments at once, because you just have control over one stereo file. So what that means is that if you try to fix the problem in the master, you're also cutting other things that might not need to be cut or boosted, for example. So if you find that you need to do more than 2 dB of boosting and cutting, I would say around there, try to go back in the mix and fix that particular problematic element instead, and that will be cleaner. So point number 2, try to divide your mastering EQ process in 2 parts. So the first part will be more medium or narrow cuts, and that's more like the problem fixing EQ part of the master. So when you're going to be listening to your track, kind of individual things that you notice, resonances, stuff that might obscure the mix, frequencies that might poke out too much, and as a result kind of mask other frequencies. So that's more like the cleaning up process of the master. And once you got these points sorted, so these 2 points here I would consider more like problem fixing EQ. Once you fix that, you can focus more on the overall big picture of the track. So more like color, wide kind of tonal balance shifting, if you know what I mean. So for example, these wide cuts here, it's very subtle, it's 0.7 dB. And this high boost here, as you can see, it's less targeted. It's more of a wide kind of big picture EQ move. So once you got these individual problems sorted, you can really focus on the more, wide cuts and boosts because you won't have these individual problems poking in and out of your mix. You can even separate this process in 2 EQs. It's a good idea. I didn't do it here, but you could have one EQ with just the more targeted cuts and a second EQ with more the wide color painting, color shifting of the track. That makes sense. So just to quickly show you why I did these cuts here. So the first one is because of a timpani that's slightly too muddy. So just cutting there made the timpani a tiny bit cleaner. Of course, it's subtle. I don't want to destroy the double bass and the cello, which also live there. And the second one here is mostly for the horn. Towards the end, when the horn raises, there's a few notes which are quite resonant and kind of poke out a little bit too much. And that harmonic kind of distracts a little bit too much from the other frequencies. So as you can see, it's very subtle, but that's the problem fixing part. And then these are more like, tonal balance shifting. So there's a lot of stuff that kind of lives in that 1K area. And of course, I tweaked my mix so that I don't get too much 1K. All the individual elements were mixed already. But even after the mix, I felt like it was still a bit too much. So for that reason, I removed a little bit of that. Making the track deeper, but of course, need to be careful with that. It's a very important range. But when it's too much, it can sound a little bit 2D. You like some of that depth because you get too much mids compared to the bass. So again, it's all of a balance thing. And then a little bit more air. Again, this is very dependent on the mix. Many people just boost bass and treble because it sounds good to have more bass and treble. Be very careful with that. Every mix is different. So in many mixes, I'm not even gonna boost, or I'm even gonna cut some treble. So your mastering EQ really shouldn't look the same in different tracks. It's very, very specific to a particular track. All right. So that leads us to point number 3, which would be don't fall into the preset mindset. So of course that includes not using presets for mastering, but also not using the same type of EQ for every track. Even if you mix a track that's relatively similar the same way, even if you use the same libraries and the same types of mixing, when we talk about mastering EQ, it's just such small differences, small EQ moves, like 1 dB, that from track to track, even if everything is the same but the key of the track is different, for example, or that dynamics are slightly different, the CC1 in the composition phase, all of this is going to change your decisions regarding that 1 dB cut and boost. So you can't really use the same EQ twice. Every mastering EQ will look different. And you really need to focus on what's wrong, what's too loud, what's not too loud. Use reference tracks to know where you're at, or use tonal balance control alongside that. It can also help locate where your frequency response is. Also, tonal balance control, great plugin. But what you need to do is really kind of be objective about the frequency response and do not fall into habits. And that's how you will get good masters. Alright guys, so I hope that was helpful and I will see you later. Cheers!